and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Please be seated. I don't watch a lot of television. I don't get cable. But last summer, a friend recommended a new series on Apple TV, Ted Lasso. Maybe you've heard of it. And this fall, I started watching it. And as absurd as it is, I really love it. The premise is that an American football coach gets hired to coach a soccer team in Great Britain. That's Ted Lasso, the main character. And Ted is a relentlessly optimistic, positive, cheerful person. Just kind of makes your teeth hurt. He's so positive and happy and cheerful. But in spite of that, I find myself kind of drawn in. And one of my favorite episodes happens about halfway through the first season. There's a scene in a bar, and there's a bet between Ted Lasso and the ex-husband of his boss, who owns the soccer club, the ex-husband who used to own the soccer club. And the ex-husband has no use for Ted, thinks he's an idiot, thinks he's a terrible coach, thinks he's just an idiot. And so he figures he's got to be as bad at playing darts as he is at everything else. And the game goes as Rupert, the husband, thinks it will. Ted gets himself pretty far behind, and the game is coming to an end, and he needs 2 triple 20s and a triple bullseye in order to win. Kind of 3 impossible throws right in a row. And he starts this speech saying, "Guys have underestimated me my entire life. And for years, I never really understood why. It really used to bother me. But then one day, I was driving my little boy to school, and I saw a quote by Walt Whitman. It was painted on the wall, and it said, 'Be curious, not judgmental.' I like that. So I get back in my car, and I'm driving to work, and all of a sudden, it hits me. All of those guys that used to belittle me, not a single one of them was curious. You know, they thought they had everything figured out, so they judged everything and they judged everyone. And I realized that they're underestimating me. Who I was had nothing to do with it." And in this speech so far, he's thrown 2 triple 20s, just pausing in between a sentence, to great applause in the bar, as you can imagine. Because, he goes on, if they were curious, they would have asked questions. Questions like, "Have you played a lot of darts, Ted?" To which I would have answered, "Yes, sir. Every Sunday afternoon at a sports bar with my father from the age of 10. And then he throws the triple bullseye, winning the bet to huge applause in the bar. Now, as an aside, I got curious because that quote, "Be curious, not judgmental," from Walt Whitman didn't make my soul soar in the way that other quotes from Walt Whitman do. I sing the body electric when lilacs last in the dooryard bloomed. And so I got online, and sure enough, Walt Whitman never said or wrote that. It's not really clear. It's not really clear who did. It might have originated in an advice column in the 70s, but whatever. It's a beautiful quote. I think at the heart of it, it says, staying curious is a way of admitting that there's more to this life than we can understand, that there's more going on, that maybe the way we look at the world is open to amendment. There's more ways to look at things. That maybe the way we understand other people that we come in contact with is that we don't have the full picture. Maybe even our own understanding of ourselves isn't complete. That being curious, staying open to new information, new ideas is important. Not being judgmental, just another way of saying not being closed to the possibility of new information and new ideas. And I think the 3 kings had to have been in that former camp of the curious, right? Except, of course, they weren't kings. Matthew doesn't call them kings. Matthew calls them magi, which is a Greek word that is usually translated magician or sorcerer or maybe astrologer or astronomer. Our Bibles translate it wise men, which I think is probably good enough for our purposes. In my imagination, these 3 wise men live in separate cities. One of them has a shop where he sells potions and herbs to kind of cure what ails you, or to make your neighbor fall in love with you, or to help you sleep through the night. Whatever you need, he's got it. Another one has a tent. He travels around, he sets it up, and he'll tell your fortune. He'll read the lines on your palm, or he'll read your star chart and tell you what's going to happen down the road for you. And the third one spends his mornings teaching undergraduates ancient languages and his afternoons in the library poring over scrolls, trying to figure out what life was like hundreds of years ago. His wife complains because he stays up late in the evening by candlelight doing the same thing, and he says, look, I just need to finish this book so I can get tenure and everything will be all right. They've got life pretty well figured out. They make enough money to take care of their family. They can put a little away for retirement, but they have that kind of just sort of unsettled feeling deep down inside that they don't really pay much attention to usually, but in quiet moments kind of bubbles up, percolates up for them, and they wonder if there isn't more going on in this life than they are aware of. Isn't there something kind of missing? And they find themselves sitting late at night on the front porch, looking up into the sky. And one night, there seems to be a star. All three of them see it on their separate porches. It seems to be a star that is oddly calling to them somehow, as ridiculous as that seems, winking at them even. And they convince themselves, no, they're just imagining this, and the star seems to fade away and then come racing back up. And they think, no, there's something going on. And finally, they go to bed, and the next night, there it is again, and the night after that, and the night after that. And so each of them separately decide to follow it. What the heck? They haven't done something different in a whole long time. So the shopkeeper puts a sign on his door saying, gone fishing, and this fortune teller sells his tent and buys a camel, and the professor decides it's time for a sabbatical. And they start heading west, following this star. And in the middle of the desert, they meet up, and they sheepishly finally admit to one another what they're doing. And when they realize that there's three of them doing this, they feel a whole lot better about this whole adventure. That makes that really uncomfortable conversation they had with their wives a few days ago make a little more sense. They're not totally crazy. And they agree in talking over things at the campfire that probably the most likely thing is that this star announces the birth of someone really important. And so they continue to follow the star through the desert, and it leads them to Jerusalem. They wander around the streets of Jerusalem asking, where is the one who is born King of the Jews? We've been following this star here, and people sort of are trying to stay clear of them because it's just a weird question. There already is a king of the Jews. His name is Herod. He is King Herod. He's not really a king in the traditional sense. He's a client king of the Roman Empire. No one much likes him. Actually, that's an understatement. Everyone loathes him because he works for the Romans, who they all hate. But anyway, there already is a king of the Jews. There's not going to be a new king of the Jews born just because there's a star in the sky. Finally, Herod hears about this, and because he doesn't want the people to get all excited about a new king, he brings the wise men in, and they have a conversation. And Herod says, well, you know, in the book of Micah, and the prophet Micah says that if this is going to happen, it's going to happen in Bethlehem. Why don't you go see if you can find this king, and then come back and tell me about him. So they do. The star leads them to this house in Bethlehem. They enter the house bringing their gifts, which they brought for a king, gold and frankincense and myrrh, and they leave them there. And looking around this simple house, not a palace, not any place fancy, looking around this simple house, they sheepishly realize that maybe a better gift would have been, you know, some baby formula and diapers, but never mind. They leave their gifts there. They spend a few moments staring at this baby, and they know that somehow they're in the presence of something, of someone that changes everything. As ridiculous as that sounds, as unable as they are to fill it out with any further explanation in words, just at the bottom of their soul, they know that they have seen someone who's going to change the world. And then being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they return to their own country. And maybe that's the end of it for these three wise men. But I have to believe that they were somehow changed by this experience. Maybe the shopkeeper goes back and he stops selling those love potions, which, you know, they don't really work, so I'm not going to cheat people out of their money anymore. And instead of telling fortunes, the guy sells the camel, buys his tent, sets it up, and offers relationship counseling to the folks who come and see him. And the professor, instead of spending all afternoon in the library, makes a point of leaving a little early so he can stop by and buy some flowers for his long-suffering wife. Lists knocked out of their routines, knocked out of their daily habits of their daily life, enough to experience the new life that God promises all of us. I love this story of the three wise men, however you see it in your own mind's eye. This story of three curious people from far, far away who are willing to look up in the sky and see something they never saw before and follow it to its absolutely illogical, unfathomable conclusion. So I pray as we wrap up this kind of period, this season of eating too much cheese and wondering what day it is exactly, that we will instill in ourselves a sense of curiosity that will carry us through the ordinary times in this life, an openness to where God may be breaking through to a sparkling star in the sky, to a sense where there might be something new for us to engage, a new way to see this world, a new way to see those around us, a new way to see ourselves. I hope that we will, in this new year, lean into being curious and not judgmental, whoever said it first. Amen.